Hi, everyone. Wanted to thank you for participating in our virtual format tonight for the Glen Ridge Civic Conference Committee's annual Government 101, How to Run for Office in Glen Ridge event. I'm Laura Goldstein, the chair of the CCC this year. Before I get started, I wanted to remind everyone that this event is being recorded. The Civic Conference Committee was founded in Glen Ridge in 1913. The primary purpose of the group is to identify and assist Glen Ridge residents that want to run for public office. We are an all-volunteer, nonpartisan organization. Every spring, we conduct multiple interviews for any candidates interested in running for Board of Ed, Council, and Mayor. Based on our conversations with those individuals, we make recommendations to the community about who we think would best serve the town. We then assist those candidates with getting together the petitions and paperwork needed, and we hold public forums like this one to engage and inform the community and about our process and to encourage interested parties to seek endorsement. And we are always looking for new members. We are open to anyone who lives in Glen Ridge and can vote. If you think you might be interested, please reach out via email to glenridgeccc.mail@gmail.com or through our Glen Ridge CCC Facebook page or the website. It's an important organization in our town, and the more members we have, the better we can represent Glen Ridge. So please consider joining us when our term starts in the fall. Tonight, we are lucky to be joined by tenured public servants Betsy Ginsburg from the Board of Education and Peter Hughes, who is currently on council but has also served as mayor. In addition, we asked Rich Law to join to give us perspective of someone who has recently been elected to public office, to council specifically, and to address the learning curve, what was a surprise about the role, et cetera. In terms of format, each person will speak for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll shift to Q&A afterwards. So please feel free to drop questions in the chat, and we'll address those at the end. So if we could start off with Betsy Ginsburg from Board of Education.
Sure. Thank you. And thanks to the CCC for hosting this. I think it's an important piece in the puzzle when people are trying to decide whether or not to run for office. So I want to talk a little bit about the Board of Ed, qualifications, requirements, responsibilities, my experience. As you know, I've been on the board since 2000. I was first elected. I've been president of the board for almost 19 years now. And it is the greatest privilege and the greatest honor to serve on the Board of Ed, and has been. And there has not been a time during that time when I have really regretted for maybe more than a few seconds running for the Board of Ed. It is an awesome responsibility because people entrust their children to us. And the Board of Ed is a policymaking body. I think one of the big misconceptions about the board is that we hire and fire people, that we do a lot with personnel, that we write curriculum. We really don't do those things. There is one person that we hire, and that is the superintendent. And from then on, the hiring is done wherever in the chain of command someone falls. So if you think of us as somewhat similar to a corporate board, in that policy is our primary job. Policy and communication with the public. We are your representatives. Every Board of Ed member is an at-large member rather than representing a particular geographical area or a particular school or a particular age cohort of students. All of us represent all students and all families in Glen Ridge. And that's an important thing. We make policy, we review policy changes. We approve expenditures. All district expenditures are approved by the board. We oversee the budgeting process when we have about a $35 million budget. We have somewhere close to 200 employees. That's teachers and all of our other personnel. We conduct union negotiations. We have two employee unions, the teachers union, the GREA, Glen Ridge Educational Association, and they are part of the larger NJEA, New Jersey Education Association organization. And then we have a smaller bargaining unit that represents the administrators. So we do union negotiations. We use the committee system. So board members sit on one or more of the board's committees. There are several standing committees, including finance, curriculum, personnel and policy. Finance also does facilities, curriculum, personnel and policy, and negotiations. We also have a communications committee, which really focuses on board outreach, not so much district communications, but board outreach. So what we do not do, we also approve every year the recommendations of the superintendent in terms of employee contract renewal and also the granting of tenure. But we do not otherwise, we are barred by law from participating in any other aspect of the personnel process. So we do not evaluate teachers. Teachers are evaluated by their supervisors according to a very, very specific rubric. We are not qualified to evaluate teachers. We all experience teachers in our roles as parents, and sometimes we experience them as our roles as board members, but we're not qualified to evaluate teachers or administrators. So there's a system in place for that. Our educators are professionals. We are not board members are not elected rather to provide professional expertise, the professional expertise that we have in our day jobs. If you are, say, an attorney and you're elected to the Board of Ed, you're not elected to be the board attorney. We have a board attorney who specializes in education law. You contribute everything you have, your experience as a parent, your experience as an employee, whatever you do, but as a board member, your role is different. And that's something important to remember. You bring everything you have to the table, but you're not an employee of the district. You're not employed in a specific capacity to do a specific job. I think that sometimes people don't realize that school districts are run by professionals, education professionals, administrative professionals. Our role is not to run the schools, but to see that the schools are run well. So qualifications. I think obviously you have to have lived here in Glen Ridge for at least a year. You have to be a registered voter. Beyond that, obviously, you have to be willing to serve. I think those are the formal qualifications. I think it helps if you've lived here more than a year, just because it gives you a feeling for the town. It helps if you have volunteered for at least some of the many volunteer opportunities available in Glen Ridge. It helps if you have some experience with group decision making, with building consensus, with being part of a consensus. I always think that the Board of Ed and all of the boards of ed that I've served on, they have been a team of thoroughbreds. And a team of thoroughbreds means that they're highly intelligent, highly opinionated, sometimes highly vocal, but somehow those teams of thoroughbreds, successive teams of thoroughbreds, have been able to come together and make coherent policy for the district that's provided us with the stability that we need to move forward. Not every district has that. And in fact, I would say it's possibly a minority of districts in New Jersey that have the kind of ability to reach consensus and provide the stability that Glen Ridge has. And we are blessed in that way. So experience at group decision-making and consensus building is important. It's important to have context. If you have kids in school, it helps a lot. We've had occasional board members who have not had kids in school, in that they've never had kids in school. And they bring a different perspective. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it helps to have kids in school. But that said, you also, if you have, say, a second grader and a fourth grader, you have to be able to understand enough of our education system to understand what's going on at the high school. And so that's an important thing. You also have to have an open mind. I think in our job, because people entrust their children to us, we board members hear lots of stories. We hear lots of anecdotal things. We always have to remember to keep an open mind when we hear that. Parents are very vulnerable. They have perspective. They always have valuable perspective, But when a parent comes to you, first of all, your job is not to solve that parent's problem. Your job is to find where in our system the person is who can best solve their problem. So you have to have perspective. You have to have an open mind. Intelligence helps. And I have never known a board member in 21 years now who has not been intelligent. I think a sense of humor helps. It's sometimes, and I'm sure my colleagues would agree with this, it's sometimes the only thing that gets you through. You have to have a respect for both education and the professionals who do education in this state. And I can't stress that strongly enough. The qualifications for teachers in this state are outrageous. And sometimes I think that we have too many barriers to entry into the teaching profession. The qualifications for administrators are likewise stringent. We have to be able, all of us on the board, to recognize and honor their professionalism. So that's a qualification. Beyond that, I think just broad-mindedness. So that's what the qualifications are. If you like people, that's a really good qualification. You have to remember that our board meetings are conducted in public, so you have to be comfortable sitting opposite an audience that may not always agree with decisions of the board. And one last qualification I think is important. You should never run for public office strictly from anger. You should run from a desire to make things better, to contribute and to make things better. Candidates who run just from anger because a situation or an individual or an issue has made them just livid with anger have a more difficult time getting oriented to board service than candidates who run for because they want to do public service, because they want to do something good for kids, because they care about our schools, because of the role that our schools play in the community. Those are good reasons to run. Just red hot anger, not a good reason. So those are qualifications. If you have a good education, most board members that I've known have had a good education, either in the K-12 level or university level. You do not have to be an attorney, although we have had times when we've had at least 3 attorneys on the board. Sometimes I think in Glen Ridge, you can throw a stone in any direction and hit an attorney. And you do have to be in a profession that allows you, or a job that allows you time to do board service. And the time commitment, usually we have during the school year 2 board meetings a month in the evenings. And in the summer, we usually have 1 board meeting in July, which is also a board retreat. In the last few years, we've had to have an August meeting, but we don't always have an August meeting. So you have to be able to make that time. As I mentioned, each of us on the board has 1 or 2 or 3 committee and liaison assignments. We send liaisons to all kinds of organizations, the home and school associations, the GRAA, the music parents, gas lamp players. We try to make committee assignments coincide with a person's interests, and also sometimes groups that a person would be going to anyway. For example, if you are board liaison to the Forest Avenue Home and School Association, we try to find somebody who has a child at Forest just because they would go to those meetings anyway. We try not to make the time commitment too onerous for people. So the time commitment, you have twice a month, you have a 1-hour executive session plus a board meeting that is anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half to occasionally 2 hours. And then a committee and liaison assignment that might add another hour or 2 a month. You get your board packet on Friday of the Friday before the Monday night board meeting. So you get most of the day Friday and all of the weekend and some of the day Monday to prepare. The board packet includes the agenda and all the exhibits that go with the agenda, plus the executive committee agenda, which is for matters that are either related to litigation, personnel, unconcluded contracts or any other matter that is where the privacy of an individual would be violated if it were aired in public. So there are limitations on executive session. So that is the time commitment. It's not enormous. Many people put in much more time. Few people put in less, but it does require a little bit of time, a little bit of flexibility. Now that we have the ability to do committee meetings by Zoom, it has helped a great deal because we can be more flexible about our committee meetings. So those are the qualifications and requirements and responsibilities. And I would say that, you know, if people have questions, I think, you know, they can put them in the chat. There's, I think being on our side of the table as opposed to the audience side of the table is a revelation, even for people who have been involved in the home and school or volunteer organizations. There's a lot going on. And I should say also that Board of Ed members are the best trained public servants in New Jersey, and that includes members of the New Jersey legislature. We are trained by the New Jersey School Boards Association, which is our trade and lobbying and training organization. Every new board member goes to School Boards Association training. And then in subsequent years after you're elected, you have training in the second and third years of your term, and then in the first year of every subsequent term. And we also have opportunities to take part in School Boards Association training regularly if we want to throughout the year. Those are voluntary. The yearly training that I just mentioned is required by law. So we are very, very well trained. And I think that that has been a help to me and to every board member. So those are the basics. And, you know, thank you for your time.
That's great. Thank you, Betsy. Peter?
Thank you, Laura, and welcome everyone. It's nice to speak out a little bit. We've all been sort of cooped up here for the last year, and thank you for putting on the presentation. This year we'll have 2 openings on the Glen Ridge Borough Council, and there will be no incumbents running for office. So we're looking for
I think Peter is muted.
Sorry, I muted you accidentally.
Okay. Hope it's nothing personal.
Sorry, you were just talking about the 2.
Yeah, so we have 2 openings. We have 2 openings for council. No incumbents running. We're looking for people, please, to step forward and to volunteer to run for office and serve a 3-year term. So I thought, you know, what Rich and I would do tonight is give everyone an idea of what it is to serve on the council, what the responsibilities are, what the time commitment is, and try to address any kind of concerns you might have that would keep you from putting your name in the hat to run for office, and also to give you an idea of what you would be signing up for. So, well, with regard to time commitment, the council meets twice a month. We meet on the 2nd and 4th Mondays of the month. And we do that pretty much through June, and then July and August, we back it off to 1 time per month. And then we go back to the regular schedule in September. Typically meetings start at 6:30 with a 1-hour pre-meeting where we go over the agenda and we talk about specific issues, and committee members make reports. And then we go out into a public session where we actually hold votes on matters that are on the agenda. We have discussions. We meet with the public and conduct our business. It's generally over by about 8:30. So it's a 2-hour commitment then for those members who serve on the Public Safety Committee, which is responsible for the police department. We typically have that meeting start an hour earlier on Monday. So those members would start at 5:30 and would be done by 8:30. Generally, we meet in the council chamber in Town Hall upstairs. We've been remote this year, but hope to be back in the council chamber sooner rather than later. We operate similarly to the Board of Ed. We have committee assignments. There are 6 committees, and that doesn't add a little bit more of a time commitment. The committees meet periodically, although we do try to work more as a committee of the whole than as we do of just individual committees. But individual committees do meet as a group occasionally, and they'll meet, typically the chair will meet with the member of the administration that the committee oversees. So for example, Rich will meet with Jim Cowan, our director of Parks and Rec, on a regular basis, particularly now when he's getting ready for the spring and summer seasons. So I would estimate, and Rich, I don't know if you would agree with this, but it's no more than a 2 or 3 hour a week commitment when you add in council meetings and subcommittee meetings and reading and a little research and some of the other things we do. Would you agree?
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the time commitment, it's not onerous or burdensome. I don't think. I think it's something that sort of blends in with your work day, or at least that's the way it works for me. I don't know if it works for you the same way, Rich, but I get calls during the day, which I can take, or I can return later. I get calls in the evening or an email, of course, plenty of emails that we respond to. There's some things that take place on the weekends. Certainly, and I'll talk about this a little later, it's a public office. There's a public responsibility to it. And so there are certain things, events that it's appropriate for a member of the council to participate in. And that can take place on weekends. And I'm a believer that, as a public official, you ought to know the services that you're providing. You should sample them. So I encourage council people, please, if you're in charge of the fields, walk the fields. If you're overseeing the jitney program, ride the jitney. If you're working with the police department or public works, ride around with them and see what they have to deal with. So, ultimately, I think it blends in. I think it's not overly burdensome in terms of time, but like anything else, you get out of it what you put into it. As far as Rich, anything you would add to that?
No, I think you did a great job of describing the responsibilities, and just from my perspective, that one of the things I've been trying to do is that anybody that reaches out to you with an email or text message or so forth, I always try to follow that up with a telephone conversation, and I like to hear what people are thinking, and if I feel differently, I'll try to let them know why, and if I agree with them, I'll let them know why. But it's important that everybody gets heard and everybody has the opportunity to express their views.
Agreed. As far as qualifications, they're the same as they would be for the Board of Ed. You have to be a resident. You have to be, I think, an adult, 18 years or older. I don't know about a registered voter. That's a new one for me, but other than that, I think what we're really looking for ideally are for individuals who generally check their ego and whatever political affiliations they may have at the door. And please come into the council chamber with a willingness to listen, with a willingness to address the issues based on the needs and the merits, and not bring with you any kind of agenda. I agree with Betsy. Single issue candidates generally burn out. Single issue candidates, I think, really kind of miss out on the whole purpose of being a member of the council or the Board of Ed. And really, we're looking for someone who wants to serve and is willing to give of their time and of their talent to help us manage the borough efficiently, in a cost-effective way, manage the day-to-day affairs, and really put together a solid plan for the future. All backgrounds, I think, are beneficial to success on the council. I don't think there's any one recipe or any one resume that that is required. We've had people with all kinds of different backgrounds. We've had certainly plenty of lawyers, but we've had plenty of people with financial backgrounds. We've had engineers, we've had scientists, we've had business owners, we've had social workers, we've had retired members of our community. And what they all had in common, I think, was this willingness to contribute time and talent, to maintain what's good about our community, and to change what needs to be changed in a thoughtful and a deliberate manner. As far as how we're organized as a body, there are 6 areas of responsibility on the town council, and each council member is assigned to chair one of the committees. So I'll go through the committees because I think it does kind of give a pretty good sense of what we're about. And I'll go as we're organized in the council chamber. Finance and administration typically goes first in the meeting. I chair that committee, and the primary responsibility is the budget. The administration and personnel and policies, employment policies. That's really the key. The budget is where it begins and ends. This is where we set, what we're going to pay for and what we're going to fund. And so if it's not in the budget, it's pretty difficult to get something done. The next one is the Public Safety Committee, which oversees our police department and our court, the Glen Ridge Municipal Court. That committee is currently chaired by Paula Sovich, who serves as our police commissioner. Next is our Community Affairs and Public Relations Committee, chaired by Debbie Mans, responsible, as you might expect, for outreach to the community. But Debbie, is passionate about Shade Tree Commission and our Environmental Committee, and has really been very much involved with that. And, I just interrupt myself for a second. If someone comes with a passion like that, we certainly would recognize that passion and want to enable somebody to be involved with that. So the next is Public Works Committee. It's kind of the nuts and bolts committee, the guy that's making sure that the leaves are getting picked up and the snow's getting plowed and the potholes are getting filled. It's a big job. We're always doing something, whether it's a water project or a sewer project. We're dealing with issues of nobody wants to pick up our recycling anymore, and how are we going to handle that? David Lefkowitz is chair of that committee, and he's doing a great job. Parks and Rec is Councilor Laws bailiwick. Not an easy job, particularly to be thrown into that job as a first-year council person is difficult. It's very involved. It's not just fields, although fields, get the headlines, but it's all the programs that we put on during the summer. It's our pool. It's our tennis program. It's a lot. And Rich, you'll talk more about that
Sure.
later, but it's what everybody sees. There's plenty of opinions about how it could be done better. And if Rich had all the money in the world, he could probably make everybody happy. But unfortunately, we can't handle that right now.
It's not in the budget.
It's not in the budget.
Yeah.
And then last is I think last would be Planning and Development, chaired by Councilperson Morrow. That is the forward-looking committee. Anything that would do with development, future development. She's our liaison to the Board of Adjustment and to our planning board. And Anne Marie also serves as our OEM coordinator. She was kind to volunteer for that job about 2 weeks before COVID hit. Timing is everything. Committee assignments are made by the mayor, who does try to match interest and experience in assigning the committees. Committee chairs, committee chairs a great job because it really does allow that person to interact directly with the people that run those areas of the government. So for example, I deal on finance administration with our administrator on a regular basis, Matt Laracy, our financial guy, and John Maliska, our attorney. Rich Law deals with Jim Cowan and others on the Parks and Rec side. David Lefkowitz deals on an almost daily basis with Bill Bartlett, our Director of Public Works. And, again, setting budgets, answering questions, helping set priorities. It's a hands-on job. It's very different than, say, our neighbor in Montclair, where the council members are not allowed directly to interact with members of the administration and have to deal directly through the administrator. In Glen Ridge, we have the ability to deal directly with the people that sort of work for us. I think that makes it one of the more interesting aspects of the job, dealing directly with the people who make it happen. And if you have a passion, again, please bring it. Some things that we've done, some examples that I think have made a really big impact. The Shade Tree Commission was recreated after being out of service for 30 years or so. And they're really doing a nice job of managing our streetscape. If you have an interest in recycling, we have a problem right now. Please think about helping us with that. We spend a lot of time talking about safety issues, including crosswalks and bike safety and how we can make them safer. Rich would love anybody's input on fields and field maintenance and how to be able to get 3 more fields in a completely built out community. The council is very closely working with the library and the service that they provide. The council, of course, has been involved on an almost day-to-day basis with COVID and the issues surrounding with COVID, both for our own employees and their safety, and for the safety of our residents. So the agenda really kind of defines what we do week to week, month to month. The agenda items come to us from 2 sources. The administration obviously will generate topics, and then members of the council have the ability to also have items added to the agenda. The agenda then is presented to the public. It's put up on our website. And we invite members of the community to please give us their thoughts on items on the agenda. And then it goes into the council, and it can be addressed in one of 2 ways. By resolution. A resolution is a vote of the council, and it lasts typically for a year. It's more of a policy kind of statement, or just a purchase order being let, something like that. Or it can be an ordinance. And an ordinance is actually law, and it's the creation of a law. It's an awesome responsibility to be making laws for our residents, and it's one that should not be taken lightly. And lastly, I would say that this is you're an elected official. You have a public responsibility. Your role is to represent residents to the administration. So the way it should work, at least the way I wanted it to work when I was mayor, was if a resident had an issue, a concern, whether it was a service failure or some request, ideally they went directly to someone in our administration who's paid to deal with those issues. If that wasn't satisfying or satisfactory, then I would encourage a resident to reach out and call a council member, specifically one that would have a responsibility for that area, and allow that council member to get involved and see if they couldn't get the situation resolved. And if that wasn't working, then please call the mayor, and then the mayor can see what he or she could do with it. We have a public persona. We're supposed to be out there with our public. We try to be. COVID's make it difficult, but we interact with our residents. I bump into them all the time when I'm out for a run. Betsy, I'm sure you bump into people plenty when you're walking. Grocery stores, GRAA events, school events. That's part of the job. There will be times when people will be happy with decisions and positions that you're taking, and there will be plenty of times when people are unhappy with that. But in my experience, like yours, Betsy, I've never felt bad about it, and I felt good about being able to help people throughout my career in government. So that's all I have. I thank you for listening. I'm going to turn it over now to you, Rich. You
Great.
can fill in the holes of stuff that I left out and fill out what it's like to be a councilman.
Thank you, Peter. And I think you did a great job of describing the responsibilities and what's involved in being on council. I just wanted to kind of focus on what it's like to run for the council or to run for public office. I decided to run for the council about 2 years ago. It was a very new process for me. Never ran for public office before. Historically, I was primarily focused on my work and my family, and there wasn't much else, to it. But about 5 years ago, I got involved with the Brookdale Park Conservancy, and really took a lot of satisfaction out of getting involved, making a contribution, and trying to better the park and build some good relationships. Being a part of that committee. Shortly thereafter, I became involved with the GRA, and it started with coaching a girls' basketball team. One of the things I kind of noticed is that the girls did not have a recreation program, so they just had a travel team. If you were a boy, we had travel teams, we had rec programs, and for whatever reason, I just didn't think that was right. So I tried to start a league on my own, and went to the commissioner, and he basically said, good luck with it. And, ideally, we were trying to get about 30 kids to play so we could have a league. And, 4 years later, we actually had 100 kids, participating in the girls' basketball program. And, the satisfaction that I get out of that is that I know no matter what happens to me, 50 years from now, 75 years from now, they will be playing girls basketball on Sundays during the winter. And, so that was really something I took some pride in getting off the ground. And, my son kind of challenged me to, look for a new challenge and look for a new initiative. And this was the best he came up with, was to run for the council. And I figured it was going to be a harmless process, and that I would interview with the CCC. If I didn't get their support, I would just go back to my day job, and very few people knew that I would have tried, to run for the council. If I won, well, I'd go through an easy campaign process. There usually are uncontested elections for the council, and probably about a month and a half after getting the support of the CCC, I realized that I was going to be in a contested election. There were 2 open positions. Peter Hughes was running for the council, and I didn't like my chances there. And also we had David Lefkowitz, who is a highly respected individual that served several terms on the council, and is a good, decent human being that's been in the community for a long period of time. So I recognized that I needed to think about how to win this thing, and really set out a plan. Part of the plan was to prepare lawn signs, because I needed to get that word out. I knew it was a controversial issue in town, and some people like them and some people don't, but I tried to do it in a very respectful way. I made sure that the signs looked good. I limited the number of signs that I purchased, but it was something that I thought was important, and I see that others have done that in recent years as well. So I found it to be very effective. I was not a user of Facebook. Somebody said, if you want to get the word out, you need to be on Facebook. And somehow, some way, we figured out a way to get a page up on Facebook and help to spread the word. And I was really amazed that, once we got things set up, all of a sudden you had 500 friends that you didn't know. But it really proved to be a very effective means of communicating. And, we did come up with flyers, and, these were just not, copy paper that you made a bunch of copies and put it in people's mailboxes. We spent a lot of time thinking about, what it should look like and what's the right size, and, some people helping with that. And, I thought that was very effective. But no matter what we did, we had to make sure that it was well done. Quality signs, quality flyers, quality message, whatever you put on, Facebook. You know, of course, your family and friends always help out in a process. And my brother and sister-in-law who live on Outlook Place, they were great in helping out. They reached out to a lot of people and tried to get the word out. The thing that really surprised me, and I think if you're thinking about running for office, I just wanted to make you aware, there's just a lot of people, or I should say several people, that you were acquaintances with that really put forth, very significant effort to help you. And I was very surprised by that. But, certain people that I would not really consider friends, but acquaintances, really did a lot, to kind of get the word out and, to help me through the process. And I know one particular person wound up offering to send out an email to his 150 closest friends, who happen to live in town, in terms of support. So, the final vote count was a landslide victory, I think, of 23 or 27, votes. So it was a clear mandate from the community. But, like I was talking about with Laura the other day, there's about 10 things that happen throughout the campaign process that if one of them didn't happen, I would have lost. And if I did not get the support of the CCC, that would have cost me more than 27 votes right there. If I didn't prepare lawn signs, again, we wouldn't have done it. If we didn't get up on Facebook, if we didn't create the flyers, if certain people didn't make the effort they did, if my acquaintance that sent out an email to 150 people, all those factors alone, made a difference. So, it was a very interesting process. I certainly learned a lot from it. And, but it was a very rewarding experience to know that a number of people really, helped you through the process. As far as, being on the council, there's not as much help. There's not a handbook to follow in terms of, how to serve on the council. I think initially it was a little frustrating that you attend the meetings and it seemed like the meeting would start, on chapter 3, talking about an issue because it was an ongoing issue, that you were not very familiar with, and you needed to do your homework to kind of get up to speed on the issue. And, one thing about me is that I tend not to say anything unless I have something to say, so over the course of the first couple of months, I tended to listen, more than, to speak out on issues. Over the course of time, you get more comfortable with it, you become more knowledgeable, about the topics, and you're able to, to contribute more. As Peter mentioned, I'm in charge of the Park and Recreation Committee. I believe it's usually the job that goes to the rookie, in that, it does require, a bunch of time. It probably is the one, committee where you get the most feedback, from people in our community. And over the course of the last year or so, I've been inundated with field issues and complaints about the dog park and tennis courts and, the artificial surface crew, reminds me of their support, for that initiative. And, like I said, I will talk to anybody. I do really try to, personally speak to everybody that reaches out to me, because again, I think it's important to listen to other people's views. And, again, while I don't always agree, I think I always learn something, from having that, discussion. Initially, the Parks and Rec Committee, had to deal with a bunch of COVID related matters. And that was trying to get the pool open for the year, trying to get the summer camp, up and running. And, that wasn't a fun process. But again, I think we got it done. It seemed to, seemed to go very well, and Jim Cowan, was very attentive to details, and all the people that were involved with the pool and the summer camp did a great job. And I guess you take satisfaction, out of being able to have the pool open, being able to have a summer camp, and to provide the kids, some relief. Last fall, when I realized it's a chronic issue that the community has, the condition of our fields, we ran into some problems last fall. Last spring, when I just got on the council, nobody complained about the condition of the fields, and I took great credit for that. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, somebody told me, well, nobody's using the fields, that's why nobody's complaining. But really what I expected was that, given that nobody played on the fields during the course of the fall and for the better part of the summer, I expected the fields to be in decent condition, for the fall. And, that proved to be wrong. So we ran into a number of challenges at all 3 of our fields. As a result, I started a committee that is focused on our natural grass fields. And included in that is the athletic director from Glen Ridge High School. We also have a representative from the GRA involved in that, as well as Mike Zakelli and Jim Cowan, and myself. And, I just want to create a feedback loop in terms of they know what we're doing. And I also want to see, how it's working. So, we've met about 3 or 4 times over the course of the last couple of months. And, we also hired a consultant to advise us on what we should be doing to our fields. And the feedback that we got is that we should be doing a lot more than what we're doing right now. And we got some bids for what a lot more work looks like. And, as Peter mentioned about, being in the budget, came back with some big numbers. And but I think there's an acknowledgement that we need to invest more in our fields. We also have to make sure it makes sense from an economic standpoint. And so we're in a process of kind of revising that. But the expectation is, we're going to be going through a process to significantly improve our fields, over the course of the next handful of months, and, hopefully, on an ongoing basis. So, overall, I think it's been a very rewarding experience. I've had the chance to build relationships with some very good people, like Peter, on the council. And I would agree with, Peter's comments, is that it is a very professional, business-like environment. People are given the opportunity to speak their minds. There are no bull in a china shop, people on the council. And I think if there were, they probably wouldn't be on the council too long, because, they wouldn't fit in very well with the rest of the group. So, I think no matter what your background, I think if you have a passion for Glen Ridge, and you're interested in running, I would seriously consider it. And if anybody had any questions to learn more about the process and so forth, and over the course of the last year or so, I've gotten calls from people who ran and said, what should I do, or how should I do it? And I really provided some more feedback to what I provided tonight. So I'm happy to do that for anybody that's thinking about jumping in the ring. I think that's it, Laura.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you, everyone. We have a couple questions, and I would encourage, everybody who, if you want to ask a question, please post it in either that Q&A button at the bottom or in the chat section. So I'll start off with the few I have in the queue. Anybody can answer this, but our council members or Board of Ed, is it a paid salary or a stipend? Do you get compensated in any way?
No, it is not paid. There is it is a labor of love for all of us. You do, if you attend a conference like the annual school boards convention, there is reimbursement for that, but basically, no, there's no reimbursement.
Great.
Peter, do we get paid? I haven't got a check yet.
It's in the mail, right?
Okay. All right.
In the mail.
Yeah. What are the steps to get started if I want to run for council or Board of Ed? believe I addressed that, but or you guys have addressed that. Rich, you kind of went through it, but I don't know if there's anything else to add.
The only thing that I did is that, you know, I when I first got into the process, I didn't reach out to people and say, vote for me. You know, what I did is that I'm running and I'd like to understand, you know, the issues that are important to you. And, you know, that really helped you become aware of what the key issues are. I think you're able to better understand the issues. And, you know, quite frankly, you just had to develop a position, you know, whether you're for or against something, you know, so I found that very helpful. And I also think it helped me to get some support because I wasn't asking for your vote. I was asking for your opinion. And I think people, you know, appreciated the ability to express themselves and, you know, share what their concerns were.
I think beyond, you know, reaching out to the CCC, as you mentioned, it's a good idea if you want to run for the board, attend some board meetings if you haven't, because it's a good idea to get a feel for how the board operates and what the board is voting on and what we talk about. And so attending some board meetings is very, very helpful. Talk to board members that you know. If you don't know any board members, somebody you know knows board members because this is a small town. So talk to some board members, just talk frankly about, you know, what you think the board does, ask their opinion about what's going on. This is, you know, public service is about relationships. And you start building those relationships long before you come on the board or the council. So I would say, you know, get an idea of what you're getting into from people who really do know from experience.
Great. How long is a term as council member or Board of Education member?
Board of Ed is 3 years. And terms, you know, you can run again, but the basic term is 3 years.
Right. Same with council. It's a 3-year term.
Perfect. Let's see. So those are the questions I had in the queue. I had a couple other ones I wanted to follow up with. Primarily, what do you, for Board of Ed and Council right now, what are the biggest upcoming challenges for next year that people running should be aware of?
Coming out of COVID. It's going to be a big transition for our students, for our faculty, for all school personnel. You know, we're fortunate in that we have been in school in hybrid at least most of the time since the fall. Mm-hmm. But, you know, before COVID, students either went to school full-time 5 days a week, or they were absent because they were sick or for some other reason. Now, you know, there's this whole nother world of hybrid instruction, and we don't know how COVID will go. We are certainly hoping to be back 5 days a week in person in the fall, but this is going to be a transition. It's going to be, if you're running for the board, you would be sworn in next January. We're still going to be in that transition. We have to think about not just the academic health of our students, which is certainly a concern after this past year, but the social emotional state of our students and our employees. And we all have to come together again. And it won't be quite like it was before. So the biggest challenge the board is going to have in the 21-22 school year is how we come together, how we resolve the issues that have come up because of COVID. And then in that coming together, how we move forward. So, and all the other things that we deal with, finances, with curriculum, with our physical plans, all of that plays into it. But mostly it is this giant transition that is going to present us with challenges that boards have never had before. And that's not to be intimidating, but that's, you know, I've been privileged to serve with board members who have big brains and big hearts, and it's going to take bigger brains and bigger hearts to get us through this transition and get us back to the really positive place that we want to be in.
Yeah, I would add, you know, certainly COVID presents just monumental problems for both the Board of Ed and for the council. Our budget is under, is very strained as a result of COVID. And our residents are strained as a result of COVID. I mean, this reopening can't happen soon enough. Hopefully this vaccine rollout will speed up, and that people who want to get a vaccine will be able to get it quickly, so we can get back to to some semblance of what we were like before. So certainly COVID, and then the issues that Rich is dealing with, that they haven't gone away. They need to be addressed. Rich, would you add anything else?
No, I agree with your comments related to the impact of COVID and our fields. It's a chronic problem that the community has had, and I guess many have tried and few have succeeded in terms of helping to improve our fields. And I know it's an important issue to a lot of people in the community, and I think our community deserves better in terms of the athletic fields. And I always tell the story is that my wife was talking to a friend of hers that she didn't speak to too often, and she lived in Allendale. And when we first moved here, my wife, she said, where are you living now, Maryland? And it was Glen Ridge. And, the response was, oh, that's a beautiful community, but they have lousy athletic fields. And, that comment just has kind of stuck in me, through the years. And, people form perceptions of our community in part, based upon our field. So it is something that I really like to fix. And I think there's good support to try to do it the right way. And hopefully we'll be successful in it.
Great, thank you. We got 2 more questions in, which I actually might be directed at for the CCC. But first one is the CCC process and cycle such that someone would express interest this spring and be on a ballot this fall, or is it a longer evaluation process? So that's correct. In terms of indicating interest to run, we typically, we're going to be starting the process for interviewing candidates in mid to late April. So there is a large group interview format where everybody comes in and is asked the same 3 questions, just to keep it apples to apples. And then following that, we do smaller group interviews. And then we schedule the CCC vote on who to endorse for positions. So I have to check the date, but typically petitions, to have all the signatures in to run, to be on the ballot for November, have to be in sometime in June. So it's just to, give us some time to interview the candidates, make a decision, and then be able to get the ballot, the signatures and stuff together in time for the deadline to have the names in by the deadline so they can be on the ballot. So that's just the time frame we're working with. Hopefully that's helpful, but yes, if you want to run for this upcoming term, we would need to know on the sooner side so we can involve you in the interview process in April, starting in April. And then the next question is, if incumbents are running for re-election, does the CCC typically try to find candidates for a competitive election, or does it normally support the incumbents? This is a mixed bag. Honestly, we are always seeking candidates to run for office, Board of Ed, council, or mayor. So we're always encouraging new people to run for to seek endorsement and go through the process. I would say that we sort of have a soft guideline that after a couple terms we would reconsider an incumbent candidate, but again, that's a soft guideline. And otherwise, we it's a anonymous voting system, and so kind of majority rules. But it's also outside of that guideline. It's just trying to have a well-rounded, diversified slate. So there's no hard and fast rules there, but it's just going through and the process of interviewing people and debating it, and ruling from there. So it is a mixed bag. I hope that's helpful. And let me see if there's any other questions. Okay, and I guess lastly, I think everybody mostly addressed this, but you know, in terms of background and skill sets, Peter, you said, you know, had a wide variety of people in terms of resumes and whatnot serving on council. Betsy, you've said there was a lot of lawyers. You know, that's been the case, but a lot of educators. And, you know, I don't know if there's any maybe gaps you see currently on either Board of Ed or council, or just anything else that you'd want to add there that would be helpful in terms of backgrounds or people in people looking to run.
I don't see any gaps. I think the best board member is a board member with multiple interests, whatever those interests are. And, you know, somebody who is reasonably well-rounded now, and that can mean a lot of things, but I think multiple interests. You know, occasionally we've had a board member who really, they have a professional life, and their professional life has affected how they are as board members, and they have not had multiple interests. They are usually less successful than people who are better rounded.
Oh, Peter, you're on mute.
Sorry, I would say that the council.
Wasn't me this time.
Is that, we're good?
Yeah.
And Rich, I'd be interested to hear what you think, but it's like running a business. I run a business. The council's we're kind of running a business here. We have to raise taxes. We have to create a budget. We have to make sure we pay our bills. We have to keep our plant in good order. We have to, you know, we have to provide services on a regular basis that people can count on, and we have to be looking out ahead to see what the threats are and what we have to be addressing 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years out. I mean, it's very similar. So anyone with a background, we deal with pretty much everything that business people deal with on a regular basis, whether it's a legal issue or an insurance issue or a cat. You know, that's what we do. It's very much we're running a business.
Well, Laura, I had one thought, which is that, you know, all of us on the three of us who are public servants have private sector jobs in our day jobs. And sometimes board members, and I'm sure this is probably characteristic of council members also, but the public sector is different. It operates in a different set of rules frequently. Education is highly, highly regulated everywhere, but especially in New Jersey. And sometimes when you come from the private sector, where things tend to, decision-making takes less time, things are less gradual, it's easy to feel like public sector should be like that too, and it is not. So I would say that what people should know coming in, they don't have to know all about public sector, public service in the public sector, but they do have to understand that it is not exactly like the private sector.
Amen to that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Everything takes longer than you think.
Yes. Yeah. The only thing I would go ahead, Rich.
I just learned that in going through this RFP process is that I was anxious to get started. I was anxious to move forward. And then they say, well, you know, it's going to take 30, 45 days for the process to complete. And you were hoping to complete it in about 45 minutes instead of 45 days. But, you know, you need to be patiently impatient. You have to respect the rules. You have to respect the policies, but you also have to try to move things along as best you can as well. So it does move slower than the private sector, but that's okay. You just have to learn that, and you have to do the best you can to keep moving things forward.
It's a great point. All right, last thing I would add is just a addition to what I was saying before, but to probably put it in a better words than I said it, you know, in terms of how we're looking at candidates, we always seek the best qualified, acknowledging the need for both stability and fresh ideas. So hopefully that's a better way to characterize it than maybe I said before. But anyway, I think that's all we have for questions and answers. This is a great event. You know, I really appreciate the three of you, you know, taking extra time tonight to speak with everybody. This is very helpful. And again, this event's recorded, so if you did want to refer back to it later, we will be posting it up on the Glen Ridge CCC Facebook page and our website, you know, like by this weekend, I assume. So otherwise, thank you very much. Thank you for everybody who attended. And, you know, have a great evening, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you
Thanks
for
so much.
hosting.
And thanks to the CCC.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.